Hi, I'm George Holt, co-founder and president of Solutions Group International, based out of Southern California. SGI was created to provide specialized security services, tactical training, threat assessments, and leading-edge anti-terrorism/counterterrorism applications to law enforcement, security, government, military, entertainment, and corporate sectors worldwide. Today, we're talking about selecting a firearm for home and self-defense. So if you're thinking about buying a firearm for home or self-defense, there are several factors you need to consider before taking on the huge responsibility of firearms ownership. Number one, are you ready to own a gun? You know yourself, you know your temperament, you know your level of personal responsibility. Are you ready for that? This is a lot more complex and a lot graver consequences than owning even a car. So ask yourself, are you ready? And be honest with yourself. Where and how will you store that gun once you get it? Gun ownership, again, is a huge responsibility, and you have to lock up your guns when they're not in your direct control. Criminal storage of a firearm is a felony in many states. If a minor gets their hands on your firearm and they injure or kill someone with it, even if it's themselves or you, and you survive, you will face prosecution. You have to safely store your firearm in a locked box or a safe, or use an approved firearm safety device, and that's like a trigger lock, cable lock, etc. The next question to ask yourself, are you willing to devote the resources to being properly trained to use it? By resources, I mean both time and money. You know, most people don't need a $2,000 gun. Most people need a $500 gun and $1,500 worth of training. Are you willing to do that? If you're not willing to do it, then you're probably not ready to own a firearm. Here's a big one. Are you willing to actually use it if you need to? Most people think that if you pull a gun on somebody, they're going to comply and do what you tell them to do. Any police officer who's worked with hardened criminals can tell you that that gun doesn't scare everybody. In fact, sometimes introducing a firearm into a scenario can be more of a danger to you, especially if you're not willing to actually use it if you need to. So I like to say you don't make any insincere gestures. One of those is you don't point a gun at somebody unless you're actually willing to pull the trigger. So ask yourself that question. Another consideration is, what type of firearm do you need? I recently had a conversation with someone who said they suggested that single women have shotguns because there's no need for training, etc. Well, of course, that runs counter to what we talk about in terms of training. Yeah, a shotgun may be a good weapon for home defense, but you can't put a shotgun in your purse. So you need to ask yourself, if you're trying to protect yourself out in the field, out in the streets, what kind of gun am I going to get? And that leads us to the caliber of the firearm. There's recoil management concerns. Clearly, the bigger the bullet, if it's a .45 or a .357 Magnum, there's recoil management concerns there because those calibers tend to make the gun recoil quite a bit. So some people say, well, if you're smaller frame but you don't have a lot of hand strength, then you want to have something that's a little smaller, like a 9mm or even a .380. Well, then there's a school of thought that says if you're a smaller person, maybe you can't fight off a wounded attacker, so you need to make sure you don't just wound them, but you actually stop them. So those are considerations, and those are individual answers that you need to put some thought into. So to recap, ask yourself, are you ready to own a firearm? Again, you know yourself better than anybody else does. Be honest with yourself and ask yourself, is it a good idea for you to have a gun? Are you willing to devote the resources necessary, both time and money, to be trained to use that firearm? Do you have a safe place to store it? Do you have a safe way to store it? And what kind of firearm should you get? Those are all huge questions. It's not just as simple as you going down to the gun store and picking something out and walking out with it. This is a potentially life-altering decision, and you should put some thought into it. For more information like this, you can check our website at solutionsgroupinternational.com, and we'll see you next time.